All right, let's not keep our guest waiting any longer. She is a political columnist. She's the co-host of the Disorder podcast. She's a former British diplomat and was the British ambassador to Georgia. And she literally just got off the plane from there like an hour ago and is staying up late and is very jet lagged. So, Alex, welcome. Thanks for
Woohoo!
joining us.
Hello, Alex. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. And I'm sorry for this rather dark, spectral scene. I had to relocate to be closer to my Wi Fi because my kids are video gaming upstairs, and that was why we weren't getting a good signal.
Yep.
So I know I look a little ghostly, but that's also partly after 24 hours of jet lag because I have flown straight from the streets of Tbilisi to be on this show.
Oh, we're so honored to have you and thrilled to just hear what you have to say and learn a little bit more. We're not getting as much news, I would say sort of front-facing news, it's something easily accessible news about what's happening there as we should, quite frankly. So maybe we could start with, do you want to, Greg, start with some top line thoughts that you have about what you just came from, what's happening there, and your takeaways. I know that's a big whole thing I just threw at you, but please take your time and walk us through it.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, I'm sorry for this very spectral image. I know it looks like I look like death. So I spent the last week in Georgia. Georgia is a tiny nation in the heart of the Caucasus Mountains, originally part of the Soviet Union, broke free, declared independence when the Soviet Union collapsed. And ever since then, it's gone through a series of governments, kleptocracies, corruption, criminality. But bit by bit, each government has been a little bit better than the last. And in 2003, it had something called the Rose Revolution, where it threw out a very corrupt ancien regime, still affiliated with Moscow, and really started introducing democratic reforms, rule of law reforms, and very firmly committed to trying to join the EU and NATO as a way to anchor themselves at the heart of Europe, which is where they see themselves belonging, and finally breaking free from Russia. And what has been happening in the last few years is that a new government has come to power that has continued to go along with trying to join the EU and NATO, but in practice has slowly begun a process of democratic backsliding. And everything came to a head about a year ago as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because the EU, in response to the Russian invasion to Ukraine, realized it really had to make a tangible offer to countries in this sort of gray zone, the sort of countries that are trying to break free from Putin and Moscow and anchor themselves in the West. And the EU couldn't really keep them waiting any longer. So it finally granted official candidate status to Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. And for the Georgian Dream government, it was, oh no, they're finally offering us a tangible entry to the EU. And this government has been riding two horses. It's been trying to keep relations going with Russia while telling its population it was committed to the EU. And when that offer came from the EU, they realized they had to make a choice. And what has happened is, I think it has become clear that they have made a choice. They think Russia's going to win in Ukraine, that Georgia is better served staying with Russia. And so they started introducing laws to clamp down on civil society, announcing that they were going to outlaw the opposition, suppressing the free media space in Georgia. And it all came to a head just in the last 2 weeks. They had elections, which are widely believed to have been rigged and fraudulent and illegitimate. And immediately after the elections, the incumbent government announced it was putting on hold for 4 years any attempt to join the EU. And this is what straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't know how many of your listeners have been following this on the news, but it led to massive protests out on the streets in Tbilisi that have slowly spread all the way around the country. There are hundreds of thousands of Georgians, and this is a tiny country. There's less than 4 million population. So it's been huge protests, night after night after night. And today, the day that I was flying back, they even had a general strike. And they've had all these different groups of protesters. They've had IT guys, they've had human resources guys, they've had architects, artists, NGOs, aid
Wow.
workers. And then at 8 o'clock, they had the techno music scene coming out and protesting.
Wow.
I mean, it has been this widespread protests because what they realize, it's not really about the EU. It's about the soul of their country. Are they going to be sucked back into the Russian orbit to become a satellite of Moscow again? Or are they going to be a free and independent country?